Hello everyone, and welcome to BattleTech Faction Briefings. Today, we continue our discussion of the units of the Wolf's Dragoons. There's also a BattleTech Faction Briefing playlist for those who want to catch up on all the stories of the Wolf's Dragoons. This time we are talking about the problem solvers of the Dragoons. The one, the only, Zeta Battalion. Like all members of the Wolf's Dragoons, they use a unit symbol of a black snarling wolf on a red background. It is painted on the upper right torso of their battle mechs. Zeta Battalion uses a Greek Zeta as their regimental symbol. It is painted on the left arms and/or upper right legs. Zeta stands out by using a solid black paint scheme. This makes their insignia stand out, especially the silver Zeta symbol. After the ilClan trial, the rebuilt version adds white stripes with red highlights to their mechs. Like all the units of the Wolf's Dragoons, there is quite a bit of history for Zeta Battalion. If you want to skip spoilers, then go to the time listed. The origins of Zeta start with the rest of the Wolf's Dragoons in clan space. The team was created as a recon unit to evaluate the condition of the Inner Sphere prior to the clan's proper arrival. The whole of the Dragoons arrived in the Inner Sphere in 3005. They took up a contract with the Federated Suns not long after that. The first mission for Zeta was on Halloran 5, a world where the Capellans had been staging raids on the Federated Suns. The world was defended by Mirian's Highlanders and the Black Wind Lancers. Zeta went to Halloran with Beta, Gamma, Delta, and the 7th Commandos. Zeta started with a surprise attack that drove the defenders out of their base, which helped secure a landing zone for the rest of the Dragoon team. Zeta went with Beta and Gamma to attack the Highlanders, while Delta kept the Lancers busy. After several days of fighting, the Liao forces were routed and the Dragoons were victorious. After that, Zeta was used in minor operations, but in 3008, they went with the rest of the Dragoons to New Aragon. The world had been taken by the Capellans earlier in the year, so this was an important counterattack. The world was protected by 8 Liao regiments. In preparation for the attack, small raiding teams were sent to nearby planets to function as a distraction. The Avalon Hussars and Crucius Lancers took on the 1st and 2nd Ariana Fusiliers, Fremont's Cuirassiers, and Tremaldi's Secutors. The whole of the Wolf's Dragoons was teamed up with the 4th Deneb Light Cavalry and faced off with the 1st and 2nd Kearney Highlanders, McCormick's Fusiliers, and the Waco Rangers. The arrival was met with disaster as the 4th Deneb's ship took damage from aerospace fighters, and the damage put their unit out of the battle for a week as they repaired and reorganized. The Dragoons' ship was hit as well, but they recovered and pushed forward with the attack. The Highlanders were dug in and held their position even after artillery bombardment. Several Dragoon forces tried to break the line, including Zeta. None of them could shatter the Highlanders. The other Davian forces were also having trouble, so Jamie Wolf came up with a plan. He sent the 7th Commandos with light units from Alpha and Gamma regiments to drop in behind the defenders of El Diablo Pass. Then, the Zeta Regiment hit the pass from the front, and the Waco Rangers took heavy damage, including the death of their recon commander, Lieutenant John Waco, who was accidentally killed by being stepped on after ejecting from his Wasp. The rest of the Dragoons followed Zeta and easily dealt with McCormick's Fusiliers. After that, the Capellan forces were overrun, and the world was won for the Federated Suns. In 3009, after their contract ended, the Wolf's Dragoons returned to the clan homeworlds to report on the current state of the Inner Sphere. The mission would take 10 months to complete. In mid-3010, the Dragoons took up a contract with the Capellans. The only notable mission for Zeta during this time was joining the other members of the Dragoons defending Shiro III in 3012, a battle that would end the Free Worlds League invasion into the Capellan territory. The Dragoons were teamed up with several Capellan units to fight the Marik forces. The battle was successful, but Zeta commander Frank Wells died during the defensive operation. In 3014, a deal was struck between Maximilian Liao and Anton Marik. This led to the Marik Civil War, and the Dragoons were brought in to assist Anton's faction. Zeta Battalion was part of Task Force Eagle with the goal of reaching Atreus. The team was made up of Beta Zeta, the 7th Commando, 3rd Ducal Guard, and 4th Regulan Hussars. Their first stop was Novo Roma, where they faced off with the 9th Merik Militia as well as 6 regiments of local conventional forces. As the fighting continued, the commandos took the leadership of the planet hostage. The local troops surrendered, and the 9th fled the world and went to Emrys 4. Afterward, Task Force Eagle remained on world to hunt loyalist resistance forces. The next mission for Task Force Eagle was to join up with Alpha and Gamma on Emrys 4. The world was defended by the 6th and the 9th Merik Militia, as well as local forces and heavy aerofighter support. The fighter battle was fierce, but the rebels were able to land with little trouble. Beta teamed up with Zeta and the fire support team to go after the 9th. However, they had to deal with constant ambushes during the campaign. With aerospace and artillery support, Beta and Zeta were able to break the militia's hold on the world. The 9th fled alongside the 6th, who had been defeated by Alpha and Gamma. After the battle, Zeta moved to Semeni. The next mission came in January 3015, when they took Tiber with little challenge. Zeta teamed up with Beta, the fire support team, Kerensky Company, the 6th and 8th Ducal Guards, to hold the world from a loyalist counterattack. The Loyalists were made up of the 1st Regulan Hussars, the 1st, 5th, 6th, and 8th Orloff Grenadiers. The Hussars landed first and fought Zeta. The power of Zeta wore down the Hussars to just a battalion, but they secured the LZ for the Loyalist forces. The 5th Orloff took on Beta. The 8th Orloff moved in to support the 5th, but Zeta intercepted them and dealt heavy damage. Meanwhile, the 1st and 6th Orloff took on the Ducal Guards and easily broke them, despite the efforts of the Kerensky Company. Zeta did one last attack against the Loyalists in order to allow the rebels to organize a retreat. The Ducal Guards were destroyed, but the remainder of the team escaped with only moderate losses. When things turned against the rebel forces, Duke Anton made his biggest mistake and took Joshua Wolf as well as 27 Dragoon civilians hostage. This brought the Dragoons to the world of New Delos. Upon their arrival, they learned that Anton Merik had killed the hostages. This led to a campaign of revenge against Anton Merik. Zeta was kept in reserve with Beta. However, the battle continued, and Zeta joined the fight to destroy Anton's fortress. When the smoke cleared, Anton Merik and every one of his soldiers were dead. After the war, all of the Dragoons needed time to rearm and recover. The Dragoons took up contract with Janos Merik and were set on the border of the Free Worlds League and Merik Commonwealth. Most of the missions were minor raids into Lyran territory. The most notable mission was a raid on Dixie, where Zeta and other Dragoons teamed up with Ripper's Reavers of the 1st Regulan Hussars. The team would get into heavy battle with a Lyran assault company. The Reavers proved to be very skilled and would earn the nickname of Rolling Thunder. However, in the course of the fighting, Zeta's commander, Colonel Mary Terrell, would die. The biggest operation during the Merik contract was the assault on Hesperus II. In 3019, the Dragoons took a roundabout route to Hesperus in order to throw off the LCAF. Zeta and the Black Widow Company led many of these distraction attacks. However, they were ambushed on Le Mans by the 17th Arcturan Guards. Zeta endured heavy artillery and air cover, yet, despite the odds, Zeta and the Black Widows helped secure the LZ for their escape. Sadly, these distraction efforts would be in vain, as a Lyran spy found out about the Dragoons' true objective. By the time the Dragoons arrived on Hesperus II, the planet had been reinforced by several LCAF and mercenary forces. The Lyran forces consisted of the 6th, 15th, and 24th Lyran Guards, 3rd Royal Guards, Heezen Hotheads, and Hansen's Rough Riders. On the 6th of June, Alpha, Beta, and Gamma endured heavy air cover while landing on World. They were scattered and far from their objectives. This gave the Lyran forces plenty of time to dig in and hold off the Dragoons. It took 2 weeks to reach the Erawan River. Zeta, Alpha, and Gamma attempted to cross the river while dealing with air raids and hovercraft strikes. Later, Beta and Zeta were sent in to be a distraction, while the Black Widow Company, alongside Delta and Epsilon, were attempting to flank the Defiance Industries factory. The battle was rough, and Colonel Simpson Pollock was killed in the fighting. After many long weeks of fighting, the Dragoons had to retreat and give up this mission. After the retreat, the Dragoons took time to recover. Jamie Wolf went back to clan space and returned with new equipment 6 months later. There was little action during this time of recovery. After that, the Dragoons took up a contract with the Merik and Commonwealth. Zeta would be stationed on the border and be involved in minor raids. In September 3021, a preemptive strike was launched on Draconis 6 to stop a potential Combine invasion. Alpha, Delta, and Epsilon, along with 3 regiments of Donegal Guards, were sent to Draconis. They faced off with the 3rd and 22nd Diron Regulars and the 2nd Sword of Light. Zeta would join the fight as things got more heated. The creative forces gave the Dragoons a challenge, destroying a good part of Delta and almost killing Jamie Wolf. Despite the losses, the Dragoons were successful in preventing the invasion. Due to issues with Lyran Command, Jamie Wolf used an escape clause in his contract to leave the Commonwealth in 3022. After that, they took up a contract with the Draconis Combine. They began by doing minor raids into the Federated Suns. In 3023, Zeta worked with Epsilon and the Black Widows to raid Hoth, where they were teamed up with the 17th Gale Dawn Regulars. The raid was designed to attack a Federated Suns research lab. The base was defended by the 151st Light Horse Regiment and the 17th Battalion of the 21st Striker Regiment from the Iridani Light Horse, as well as elements of the Draconis March Militia. The team used probing attacks to push back the ELH forces. A coordinated attack was planned, but the regulars jumped the gun and charged at dawn. This gave the Light Horse an opportunity to flank the Dragoons. The team rallied and took control of the battle due to the obtuse maneuvers of the Black Widows and to the leadership of Colonel Jameson of Zeta. The Widows took the facility but found all the useful research had been moved from the world. Despite the limited spoils, the destruction of an NAIS lab was considered a victory. The next big mission was in 3025, where they became part of the Deschler raiding team, which was a distraction for the Galtor campaign. The team was made up of Beta, Gamma, and Zeta. Beta was sent out to raid the factories, while Gamma attacked the Raman Draconis March Militia. It was expected to be an easy raid, but the 4th Davian Guards were there and faced off with Beta Regiment. The 4th pulled off an ambush and divided the heavy and light elements of Beta. Baker Battalion was cut off, but Charlie Battalion held the line and bought enough time for the regiments to regroup. It took months of fighting, but Beta, with Zeta support, was able to take the factories. However, the factories had been stripped of all valuable material and research, making this a hollow victory. While the team did take Deschler, the Galtor campaign failed, and the planet was almost cut off. The Dragoons were given orders to withdraw. They did significant damage to the 4th Davian Guards, which was considered a success despite the fact that they had to abandon the world. In 3026, Alpha led an attack on Barlow's End, alongside Zeta and the Ryukin. This would be one of the first tests of the Ryukin. However, Jerry Akuma, the DCMS liaison officer, led a plot to assassinate the leadership of the Ryukin and the Wolf's Dragoons. Combine Special Forces set up a bombing that severely injured Ryukin Commander Tetsuhara and Alpha Regiment Acting Commander Yukinov. The chaos of internal politics was made worse by the Iridani Light Horse thrashing the Kurita forces. With the leadership in shambles, the Ryukin XO, Elijah Sato, and Zeta Battalion's commander J. Elliot Jameson took over the battle. The battle would be a loss, and Sato would die as the Kurita forces fled the world. As the contract came to an end in 3028, things had gotten to a boiling point in the Draconis Combine. Fighting broke out on Anting and led to a battle between the Combine and the Dragoons on Misery. All units of the Wolf's Dragoons faced off with 4 regiments of Ryukin, the 17th and 21st Gale Dawn Regulars, and the 8th Sword of Light. The Dragoons faced 3-2 odds, yet they kept fighting. Zeta Battalion ended up ravaging the Kurita forces as they had the highest kill count of any Dragoon unit. However, their brash tactics also caused Zeta to take severe losses, with 24 of their 40 members dying. While the overall battle was a victory, the overall Dragoon losses were over 50%. Zeta was teamed up with the Home Guard and sent to Robinson to protect the Dragoon civilians. Not long after the Dragoons arrived in the Federated Suns, they took up a contract with House Davion. When the Fourth Succession War began, each of the 5 regiments would face off with members of the Galdon Regulars. They would all pull back and arrive on Crossing with only a regiment's worth of mech warriors. In September 3029, the Kurita forces came to Crossing. 4 regiments of Galdon Regulars arrived to fight the Dragoons. This included the 5th, 8th, 12th, and 16th, all of whom had faced the Dragoons in previous battles. To make matters worse, an elite team called the Sword of Void came to assist. The DCMS did not bring conventional forces to the fight. The Dragoons called up their conventional forces back from the Home Guard that were stationed on Robinson. Despite a valiant defense, the numbers advantage of the Combine pushed the Dragoons to their breaking point. The Dragoons held together with assistance from the 10th Deneb Light Cavalry. Meanwhile, Zeta had been rebuilding, and when they got up to full strength, they borrowed dropships from Miller's Marauders and arrived on Crossing to help the Dragoons crush the Kurita forces. This turned the tide of the battle, and the 5th Galdon Regulars were wiped out while retreating. The 16th surrendered to Natasha Kerensky. The 8th and 12th escaped after taking heavy damage. By the end of the Battle of Crossing, only a quarter of the Kurita forces had survived. After the war, Hans Davion gave the surviving Dragoons the World of Outreach. It took years to recover enough to field any kind of effective units. The first unit to head out was Natasha Kerensky's Black Widow Battalion in 3031. It took years for the whole of the Dragoons to recover, and during that time, there are no noted missions for Zeta. The Dragoons would get transferred to CAF in preparation for the War of 39. However, CAF was attacked by the Ryukin Ni and Ryukin San in hopes of preventing the Dragoons from attacking Dairon. The fighting did not last long, and the Dragoons took minimal losses, but the Ryukin forces were able to damage the Davion base and sunder some of their supplies. After that, the Ryukin left, having bought time for the Combine to prepare defenses for the FedCom attack. However, the attack was cancelled due to the loss of supplies. Due to their reckless tactics, Zeta took 25% losses during the course of the fighting. They would remain on outreach until they were fully rebuilt. After the clans arrived, Zeta was at full strength and stationed in the Free Worlds League. Like the rest of the Dragoons, they were called back to outreach in order to plan the Dragoons' next step. They chose to assist the Inner Sphere and helped train the leadership of the Great Houses in clan tactics and rules. The 5 main regiments of the Wolf's Dragoons were sent to Luthien to help the Draconis Combine defend their capital. The striker and support units were left on outreach. This also includes Zeta Battalion. After the battle, the Dragoons were quick to rebuild by using clan salvage, receiving new units from their employers, and bringing in clan bondsmen to fill out their ranks. This would have unintended consequences, as a coup started in 3054 with Ilsen Novacat and Alpen Wolf attempting to take control of the Dragoons. Elson Novacat challenged Jamie Wolf and won, putting him and Alpen Wolf in command of the Dragoons. Jamie demanded a trial of refusal, and the Dragoon Civil War began. Meanwhile, Delta and Zeta were on a mission for the Federated Commonwealth. Zeta would break contract and return to outreach to join Ilsen's coup forces. Delta remained on contract in order to maintain the unit's reputation. By the time Zeta arrived, the fighting was nearly over, and they saw very little combat. Zeta leadership accepted the results of the fight and helped with the reorganization of the Wolves. This caused a great change in the structure of Zeta. They would be formed into 3 trinaries, 1 command star, and a fire support star. They also expanded their forces into heavy and assault omnimechs. Despite an aspect of the Civil War having to be about not adhering to clan traditions, some of those traditions made their way into the Wolf's Dragoons. As a side note, in 3058, Colonel Jameson was involved in the inquiry of the 21st Centauri Lancers for their complacency in the Blakist capture of Terra. They were exonerated due to the word of Blake holding Lancer civilians hostage. The Dragoons showed sympathy for the difficulties the 21st Centauri Lancers and their commander had faced. Zeta would spend time training the damaged regiments of the Wolf's Dragoons, which kept them off the battlefield for a few years. During this time, they also expanded the unit with 2 more trinaries, as well as artillery, armor, elementals, and arrow fighters, making them regimental-sized for a short time. Some of the Wolf's Dragoons were sent into the Chaos March to protect the worlds from the growing influence of the Word of Blake. In 3066, Zeta battled on Epsilon Indi against a group of unknown warriors using clan tech. The Dragoon forces won. After their time in the Chaos March, Zeta would return to Outreach to refit before their planned mission to the Ghost Bear Draconis Combine border. However, in October 3067, a team of Blake-supported mercenaries conducted a surprise attack on Harlech City on Outreach. The enemy mercenary force was made up of the Waco Rangers, Smithson's Chinese Bandits, Tiger Sharks, and the 51st Dark Panzer Jaegers. The team was led by the Waco Rangers, who still held a grudge against the Dragoons. To make matters worse, Word of Blake ROM agents also pulled off terrorist and sabotage attacks. The Chinese bandits pulled off bombing raids on airfields and the Dragoon barracks. This weekend, Dragoon aerofighters and killed many off-duty soldiers along with Dragoon civilians. The Tiger Sharks pulled a surprise attack on the Home Guard. The Panzers worked with the Rangers to destroy the Hiring Hall, Wolf Hall, and capture the spaceport. The Dragoons counterattacked and called for their other regiments to come home. Beta and Epsilon were on world, but their units were scattered around the world, and it took time to gather their forces. Zeta and the Spiders were the first to arrive as reinforcements. Jamie Wolf led his forces against Wayne Waco near the ruins of the Hiring Hall. Waco was killed, but after the fight, Jamie Wolf also died from wounds sustained during battle. The fighting lasted 4 days, and by the end of it, the Home Guard and Epsilon were nearly wiped out. Beta, Zeta, and the Wolf Spiders were all beat up as well, and took the remains of the shattered units to rebuild their forces. Gamma then arrived and worked with the Wolf Spiders as guards while waiting for Alpha to return. After punishing the Blake forces on Outreach, Beta and Zeta headed out to take the fight directly to the Blakist forces. They were part of Task Force Vengeance, along with the 2nd Dismal Disinherited, Lyndon's Battalion, and minor members of the Allied Mercenary Command. They attacked the Blake forces at Mars, but were countered by warships and fighters that prevented most of the troops from landing on the world. The Vengeance warships and fighters were wiped out, and many dropships were destroyed. Only Zeta and part of the Dismal Disinherited made it to Mars. The Disinherited were destroyed quickly, and Zeta put up a good fight, but also fell to the onslaught of the Blakist forces. Alpha returned to Outreach, but by the time they arrived, the world was in flames. The Blakists sent out a fleet of warships along with the 6th and 10th Divisions to wipe out the remaining forces on Outreach. Spider Battalion and Gamma put up a good fight, but the Blakists were relentless. Alpha was able to do heavy damage to the enemy fleet before dealing major damage in the ground war. As the battle raged on, the orbital bombardments wore down the Wolf's Dragoons. It was a difficult choice, but General Maeve Wolf ordered a retreat. It took the sacrifice of their last warship to make the escape. The majority of the Dragoons fled to Ark Royal. However, several units remained on Outreach to continue fighting the Blakists. After the Battle of Mars, Major Tara Lucas, a Zeta commander that was captured, was brought to Outreach in order to draw the rest of the Dragoons into a trap. Elson Novacat led a team to rescue Major Lucas. It took weeks for her to recover, but when she did, Tara Lucas became a key member of the Resistance forces. Elson Novacat would die in 3070, but Tara Lucas would meet up with Stacy Church of the new Black Widow Company, and the two units would work together to continue their mission of revenge. They took out the Allied Mercenary Command traitor unit, the Broadsword Legion, in 3071. Sadly, Lucas would die during a mission to rescue several Dragoon captives. Her sacrifice helped push the Resistance forces forward in their fight. Despite their best efforts, the world would not be liberated from the Word of Blake until the Stone Coalition arrived in 3077. The Battle of Terra was devastating to the Wolf's Dragoons, taking 81% losses. After the court-martial of those responsible for leading the Dragoons into serving Clan Wolf, Colonel Henry Hack Kincaid began rebuilding the Dragoons. This included bringing back the lost units. After Tarantula Battalion came back from a raid against Clan Wolf, Kincaid promoted Captain Haya Tetsuhara to Major and put her in charge of the new Zeta Battalion. The unit was built out of mech warriors from Wolfsbane, Tarantula, and Alpha Regiment survivors, in order to ensure that they could match the strength of the legendary unit. They would have 36 assault weight mechs. They also took 3 platoons of battle armor, a scout team, and a wing of fighters. After months of training and prep, the new Zeta was sent on their first mission. They were sent to the Duchy of Tamarind Abbey. Their mission was to assist in the capture of 3 Wolf Empire worlds. First, they destroyed the guard cluster on La Boucher. Second, they did a trial of possession for Alula Borealis. Zeta won and took the world along with a company's worth of bondsmen. The final world was Trellisane, which was a 2-week-long battle. The 106th Wolf Garrison Cluster did hit-and-run attacks and took out most of the Zeta air support. Despite the trouble, Zeta was victorious. After the contract ended, Zeta teamed up with some of the rebuilt Dragoons to attack Guyana, the Wolf Empire capital. The 91st Wolf Guards arrived, but Zeta artillery shot down some of their dropships, causing them to flee. The Dragoon team moved forward and fought the rest of the 91st as well as the local forces. The battle was a victory, and the Wolf's Dragoons showed they would not tolerate the betrayal of Clan Wolf. Zeta Battalion is one of the most interesting units in the Wolf's Dragoons. They don't have the sheer amount of engagements that many other regiments faced, but they do have a good showing in the battles they were involved with. Even after they were wiped out, their spirit helped push the rebellion against the Word of Blake on Outreach. Then when they were rebuilt, they led the charge against Clan Wolf, and will likely have more victories in the future. Zeta has some of the most skilled pilots in the Dragoons. Here are some of the most notable members. Frank Wells, the original commander of Zeta. He was a clan freebirth who brought the team easy victories, but died on Shiro 3 in 3012. He piloted an assault mech, probably a Stalker or Annihilator. Mary Terrell, the second commander of Zeta. She was a good leader, but did not last long as she died on Dixie in 3016, after commanding for only 4 years. She piloted a Marauder 2. Simpson Pollock, the third commander of Zeta. He also led the team through some tough fights, but was killed on Hesperus 2 in 3019, making him the shortest-term commander of the unit. He probably piloted a Marauder 2. J. Elliot Jameson, the fourth and longest-term commander of Zeta. He was a skilled warrior and brought stability to the unit. He took temporary control of Alpha Regiment during 3026 when their commander was wounded on Barlow's End. He died as part of Task Force Vengeance. He piloted a Stalker. Then, in 3055, he was using an assault sniper-type Omni-Mech, but ended his career, once again, in a Stalker. Haya Tetsuhara, the great-granddaughter of Minobu Tetsuhara, who led Charlie Company of the Tarantula Striker Battalion in the Dark Age. She was promoted and made the commander of the new Zeta Battalion due to her skill and aggressive tactics. She pilots a Spartan C. Tara Lucas. Originally with Beta, she was demoted and moved to Zeta in 3020 for disobeying orders. She rose up in rank due to her wild nature and took command of Red Company at Barlow's End in 3026. She would retire without ascending beyond Major. She piloted a Stalker that was destroyed on crossing. After that, she piloted an assault mech, possibly a Marauder 2. Tara Lucas, third-generation Dragoon, named after her grandmother. After the Dragoon Civil War, she became the commander of Able Trinary. By the late 3060s, she was the second-in-command of the unit. She was captured on Mars and returned to Outreach. After being rescued, she led the Resistance forces, but died prior to the liberation of Outreach. She piloted a Warhawk Masakari Omni-Mech, which was destroyed on Mars. In the Resistance, she piloted an Annihilator, as well as other salvaged mechs. Arthur Garrett, the Blue Company commander in the 3020s. He was calm and collected, avoiding risks, but still earning a high kill count. He sacrificed himself to protect his troops during the Battle of Misery. He piloted a Battle Master. Tammy Markham. She had a hot temper and was always looking for an excuse to go into battle. She fought with Blue Company in the 20s. Later, she would get promoted and lead Baker Trinary. She would die in the Battle of Mars in December 3067. She piloted a Marauder, and later she would use an Annihilator. Noe Surisubad. White Company commander in the 3020s, who was known for his competitive and reckless behavior. His company took down 3 companies of Ryukin at Misery before his death. He piloted a Stalker. Axel Vordell. He is a descendant of Jamie Wolfe's personal bodyguard and a member of the Tarantula Strikers. He was brought in as Haya Tetsuhata's bodyguard and a core member of the new Zeta Battalion. He pilots a Hellstar. Connor Daniel, the second in command of Zeta and Red Company commander during the ilClan era. His team is known for using overwhelming firepower against their enemies. He pilots a Shogun. Zeta is unique in the fact that they primarily use assault-type mechs, with high-weight heavies on occasion. They also tend to not divide into smaller groups. Instead, they attack as a group, overwhelming their enemies with their power. They are oftentimes considered a volunteer unit, but sometimes Zeta is where captains and majors will transfer overly aggressive pilots to work alongside the other hotheads in the unit. They have a focus on heavy firepower, but many of the pilots enjoy using melee attacks in their engagements. This includes the Zeta Crunch, a maneuver where 2 units charge an enemy. The first slams into the enemy, putting them directly into the path of their partner. The other main tactic is to draw out enemy commanders via dueling and finish them off with concentrated firepower. In the few eras where they were built up with armor and infantry, they used combined arms tactics. On occasion, they also have a Firestar that fields Omni-Mechs equipped with LRMs and Arrow 4 missiles. They had a very simple structure during their early years, with a command lance and 3 companies, red, white, and blue, giving them a total of 40 mechs. Later they changed into clan-based numbers, with 5 trinaries going by Able, Baker, Gamma, Delta, and Epsilon, made up of assault and heavy Omni-Mechs. While their composition changed over the years, Zeta was always built around power. Thus, even their armor, elementals, and arrow fighters should all be in the heavy armor or heavy firepower categories. No matter the era, Zeta Battalion is the heavy puncher of the Wolf's Dragoons. Due to being involved with some of the biggest fights the Dragoons ever engaged in, Zeta has a good amount of fiction to explore. Of note, Night Terrors has yet to be republished, and Shadows of Faith was an incomplete novel. Beyond that, there are plenty of source books that fill in the history of Zeta, as well as provide unit composition and location data. It should seem pretty obvious by now, but I love Zeta Battalion. They have a reckless attitude and love to wreck their enemies with overwhelming firepower and crazy tactics. This is also why they have a low pilot survival rate, but that's the price you pay for being legendary. I hope more Zeta adventures get written, because sometimes you just need the blunt force of a Zeta Battalion over the strategy and planning of an Alpha regiment. Not only do I think Zeta Battalion is worth painting up, but they are my next major BattleTech paint project. Probably. If you have spare assault and heavier heavy mechs, then this is a great use for them. Plus, black paint is simple, and the ilClan variation adds just a little extra flair to the unit. Next time, we will be wrapping up this series of videos in my coverage of the Black Widow Company and their associated units. After that, I'm going to alternate between House Military and Mercenaries. If you have a unit you want me to cover, then let me know in the comments. Before I go, I want to thank all the subscribers, both new and old. May your weapons stay hot and your reactors stay cool. Until the next BattleTech faction briefing, I'll see you at the tavern.